The committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the committee at any time. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2988, the Whistleblower Protection Improvement Act. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance. Without objection, the clerk will report.
H.R. 2988 to amend Title V United States Code to modify and enhance protections for federal government whistleblowers and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes herself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, copies which have been distributed electronically to all members in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2988 offered by Mrs. Maloney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes on the amendment. In May, I reintroduced the Whistleblower Protection Improvement Act, along with Representatives Mace, Conley, Spear, and many others. Today, the bill is supported by a bipartisan coalition of 25 members on the committee. Federal whistleblowers provide critical information on government corruption and wrongdoing, including by providing information to Congress. Their disclosures safeguard taxpayers' dollars, improve federal programs, and save lives. Unfortunately, the committee has seen too many examples of employee retaliation and employers retaliating against whistleblowers. In one instance, the TSA moved airport employees hundreds of miles away to new duty stations when they revealed security flaws at TSA. In another troubling example, a White House supervisor moved files beyond the reach of a disabled employee after the employee disclosed violations of security clearance procedures. As these examples make clear, whistleblowers often make disclosures at great personal risk. It is for this reason that protections for whistleblowers have long received bipartisan support in Congress. I thank my colleagues, especially Representative Mace, for continuing that tradition today. The Whistleblower Protection Improvement Act would make long overdue reforms to ensure that whistleblowers are protected from retaliation to the greatest extent possible, and to provide equitable remedies when whistleblowers do face retaliation. The bill would prohibit agencies from launching retaliatory investigations against employees who blow the whistle and would limit the public disclosure of a whistleblower's identity. The bill would also provide federal whistleblowers with faster legal recourse for retaliation claims and would allow whistleblowers to have their claims tried before a jury in federal district court. Access to jury trials has been a longtime priority of whistleblower advocates. The last major reform to the Whistleblower Protection Act was in 2012. When that bill passed, then-Ranking Member Elijah Cummings said, and I quote, "I know this bill represents a compromise based on the political realities of today, but the fight is not over. I will continue to fight for protections that are not in this bill and hope that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle would join me in that fight. We need to amend the law to allow whistleblowers the ability to go to court and have their case heard by a jury," end quote. I am proud to continue this bipartisan effort to protect whistleblowers today. The bill we are considering today also clarifies that whistleblowers who prevail are entitled to recover attorney fees and to receive the necessary relief to make them whole. Finally, the bill would make clear that no federal employee, including the President or Vice President of the United States, may interfere with or retaliate against a whistleblower for sharing information with Congress. The Whistleblower Protection Improvement Act has received public support from a wide range of stakeholder organizations, including the Government Accountability Project, the Project on Government Oversight, the Taxpayer Protection Alliance, Whistleblowers of America, and the National Taxpayers Union. In a support letter we received yesterday, the National Taxpayer Union praised the bill, saying that it, quote, significantly increases and reinforces whistleblower protections and includes several best practice improvements to legal whistleblower protections," end quote. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this bill and to support the heroes who disclose wrongdoing in our government. Who else seeks recognition? The ranking member is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the committee takes protecting whistleblowers very seriously. It takes enormous courage to raise serious issues that could lead to retaliation or other negative outcomes. We want to continue protecting the integrity of the whistleblower process. That includes understanding where problems or loopholes currently exist and to draft targeted legislative fixes. As legislators, however, we need to be cautious not to over-legislate or introduce solutions in search of a problem. Doing so will likely lead to well-intentioned bills that could lead to unfortunate, unintended consequences. And I think the well-intended bill before us today, the Whistleblower Protection Act, has such unintended consequences. I fear this bill will enable a federal employee who is acting in bad faith to exploit whistleblower protections to stymie presidential policies with which they disagree. In fact, this bill would enable disgruntled executive branch employees to thwart efforts to implement effective executive branch policy reforms. The federal government needs serious reform. Such reform will likely disrupt the current work of current federal employees. But that's the nature of reform. You change the direction of agency programs and missions within their legal authority. This bill will create additional layers of workforce protection that can be cynically abused by bad actors that wish to stymie, slow roll, or outright prevent the effective implementation of presidential policies, policies that the American voters want to see implemented. Under this legislative proposal, executive branch employees who vocally contradict the president could gain protection against firing by simply posturing themselves as whistleblowers with drastically reduced recourse for agency leadership or the president. In other words, out of a mere difference in opinion about the purpose or virtue of their work, a single executive branch employee would be able to undermine presidential policies while cloaking himself with whistleblower protections. This bill, if passed, would further erode the president's ability to truly lead and manage the executive branch. I urge my colleagues to oppose the bill, and I yield back.
Else seeks recognition on the Democratic side, if anyone? Seeing no one, I now recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Nancy Mace. She is the lead Republican on this bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This piece of legislation is common sense reform, at least to me. My constituents sent me to Washington to protect their tax dollars and to make sure their government is working for them and not against them. The Whistleblower Protection Improvement Act gives support to those in government who speak up when they see wrongdoing. And in the first 6 months of being in Congress, I've seen a lot of people behind the scenes trying to speak up. So why would we not want to do that? In the short time I've been here, we've seen massive amounts of money wasted on unemployment fraud, new revelations about waste in the PPP program, trillions of dollars in spending, potentially very unfair contracts. We've heard from folks inside whistleblowers regarding the border and immigration issues and how we're handling it. And most of this would remain in the dark if it were not for people, for whistleblowers willing to speak up and speak out. And these decisions to speak up don't come without a cost. Earlier this year, I waded into an issue involving massive DoD contracting fraud, and everywhere I turned, there were people and whistleblowers who had their lives ruined by the very people they were reporting for wrongdoing. These individuals were supposed to have protections, but what good does protection do if DLA insiders refuse to award them contracts for reporting corruption? At our own border this year, we've seen whistleblowers point out that this administration is doing what they're doing is wrong and how they're running a shell game to hide migrant children from the press. Do these individuals not deserve protections when they're trying to speak out? This is the reason real America is fed up with Washington. We've thrown out the good governance for the sake of polling and talking points. So today we want to do something right. It's time to govern. And I urge my colleagues to vote in support of this legislation. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Does anyone else seek recognition? Seeing no one else seeking recognition, the question now occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentlewoman from New York. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 2988 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to it. I now call up H.R. 2043, the Plum Act. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 2043 to amend Title V United States Code to require the Director of the Office of Personnel Management to establish and maintain a public directory of the individuals occupying government policy and supporting positions and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes herself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, copies of which have been distributed electronically to all members in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2043, offered by Ms. Maloney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes on the amendment. I introduce the periodically listing updates to Management Act, or the Plum Act, with Representatives Conley and Sarbanes to increase the transparency and accountability of senior leaders in the executive branch. The Plum Act would require the Office of Personnel Management to maintain a current, publicly available online directory of senior government leaders. Currently, a comprehensive list of people appointed by the President is available only once every 4 years in a publication referred to as the Plum Book. The Plum Book provides only a snapshot in time and does not reflect changes that occur between publications. As a result, current information about senior administration officials is often outdated and difficult to find. In the digital age, providing Americans with a list of top federal officials only once every 4 years is simply unacceptable. The Plum Act would implement recommendations made by the Government Accountability Office and the Administrative Conference on the United States. The bill would modernize and expand on the current publication of the Plum Book and align it with modern data standards. The Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee approved a similar bill last Congress with broad bipartisan support, and the Plum Act has been strongly endorsed by a bipartisan group of more than 24 civil society organizations and experts. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for introducing the Political Appointments, Inclusion, and Diversity Act, which requires OPM to coordinate with the White House Office of Presidential Personnel to make a summary of demographic information on political appointees publicly available. Her bill is being considered today as part of the Plum Act. We should be working toward making our government more transparent for the American people and more representative of everyone in our country. The Plum Act would provide timely and transparent information about senior government officials that are making decisions impacting the lives of millions, and it would shine a light on who is at the table in our government and who is not. I urge my colleagues to support this important legislation, and I now yield back, but I also ask who else seeks recognition. Mr. Comer is now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since the Eisenhower administration, a listing of all political appointees has been posted at the end of the President's term as a resource for the incoming President's transition operations. The Plum Book includes the titles, names, and pay scales of the positions held by Washington's senior decision makers. It's compiled by the Office of Personnel Management and is published by the Government Publishing Office for free public download. H.R. 2043, the Plum Act, intends to create a continuously updated website listing thousands of political appointees and senior government officials. When we considered the Plum Act last Congress, I discussed my reservations that the bill goes beyond the original intention of the Plum book and opens the door for abuse. I noted how during the Trump administration, extremist activists directly incited by Democrat lawmakers targeted federal officials at their homes. This toxic political climate has had real and damaging effects on our nation's democratic discourse. I fear good people, the experts and civil servant reformers we so desperately need, will be discouraged from serving in the future presidential administrations. And Madam Chair, this is not a hypothetical. Shortly after I raised such concerns about the Plum Act last September, a member of this very committee openly described outgoing administration officials as bad, in negative terms, very negative terms, and called for them to be systematically tracked after leaving public service. At the same time, we saw progressive groups build a crowdsourced database with the stated purpose of tracking outgoing Trump administration officials described as enemies to blacklist them from future private and public sector employment opportunities. Ironically, the self-described Trump Accountability Project is no longer publicly accessible. Accountability for thee, but not for me, I suppose. Madam Chairwoman, I know we both agree that public accountability is a central requirement of our constitutional government, and it requires diligent congressional oversight and legislative work. Together, we have advanced some outstanding bipartisan transparency bills this Congress. However, given the reality of the sadly polarized political climate, I continue to have reservations about the Plum Act. I fear it will ultimately dissuade highly talented individuals from wanting to join the government. And I should note that political appointees are already accountable to the duly elected president, which they serve, and in turn, the president is accountable to the American people every 4 years, and Congress each and every day of his or her term. Congress and our committee in particular provides a daily accountability which the Plum Act in part seeks to transfer to activist groups. I will continue to work with you on public accountability and would appreciate holding a legislative hearing before advancing reforms such as this. I encourage a no vote, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Who else would like to request recognition? The question now occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentlewoman from New York. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 2043 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. I now call up H.R. 3787, the District of Columbia Local Juror Non-Discrimination Act. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 3787 to amend Title 11, District of Columbia Official Code to prohibit the exclusion of individuals from service on a District of Columbia jury on account of sexual orientation or gender identity.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes herself to offer an amendment in the nature of substitute, copies of which have been distributed electronically to all members in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3787 offered by Ms. Maloney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as a base text for purposes of amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of this bill, Mrs. Norton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Maloney, for holding a markup on this important equal protection bill for the District of Columbia. This bill would clarify that D.C. residents may not be excluded or disqualified from jury service in the local D.C. trial court, the D.C. Superior Court, based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Specifically, the bill would clarify that the term sex, which is a protected class under the non-discrimination law that applies to jurors, in the D.C. Superior Court includes sexual orientation and gender identity. D.C. has one of the strongest anti-discrimination laws in the country, including protecting individuals based on sexual orientation and gender identity. However, under the D.C. Home Rule Act, D.C. does not have the authority to amend the non-discrimination law that applies to D.C. jurors, that is, until it acquires statehood. Therefore, until D.C. is given control over its local courts, an act of Congress is required to make this important change to protect the rights of LGBTQ individuals in the district. As the Supreme Court said in Edmondson versus Leesville Concrete Company, discrimination within the courtroom raises serious questions as to the fairness of the proceedings conducted there. Bias mars excuse me, the integrity of the judicial system and prevents the ideal of democratic government from being a reality. Similarly, the court in Batson versus Kentucky, thank you, which was a jury discrimination case based on race, said the harm from discriminatory jury selection extends beyond that inflicted on the defendant and the excluded juror to touch the entire community. So selection procedures that purposefully allow black persons exclude black persons from jury undermine public confidence in the fairness of equal justice. I'm pleased that the House passed Equality Act would prohibit discrimination against federal jurors based on sexual orientation and gender identity. My bill mirrors the juror non-discrimination provisions in the Equality Act. I urge my colleagues to support this important bill, and I thank you, Chairwoman Maloney, for marking it up today.
Yields back. Who else seeks recognition? Mr. Comer is now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill amends the definition of sex in Title 11 of the District of Columbia Official Code to include sexual orientation and gender identity, and prohibits exclusion of jurors based on this expanded definition of sex. Every piece of legislation that comes before Congress should be rooted in facts and have an explicit need and clear purpose. Exclusion from D.C. juries based on sex is discrimination and already prohibited under the D.C. Code. However, I do not think this committee can identify a single instance of discrimination in D.C. jury selection based on sexual orientation or gender identity that warrants a legislation before this committee. Without evidence of actual discrimination to consider, this legislation represents pure theater and virtue signaling. This bill is not necessary, and I urge my colleagues to oppose it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity is a terrible problem faced across the United States. Far too many Americans are treated as second-class citizens simply because who they are and who they love. This discrimination is not morally wrong. It is an affront to the basic American principle of equality under the law. The bill before us would clarify that it is illegal to exclude an individual from a D.C. jury pool on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. It is unacceptable for any person to be excluded from one of the most basic functions of democracy, serving on a jury, simply because who they are. The Supreme Court has stated that, and I quote, "The American concept of the jury trial contemplates a jury drawn from a fair cross-section of the community," end quote. A fair cross-section of the community. This clearly includes people of different sexual orientations and gender identity. While the District of Columbia already prohibits discrimination due to sexual orientation or gender identity more broadly, the Home Rule prevents D.C. from independently changing Title 11 of the D.C. Code, which establishes protected classes of jurors. If Congress would simply admit D.C. as a state and give the more than 700,000 residents of D.C. full representation, this bill would not be necessary. I encourage all my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back. Who else seeks recognition? The question now occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentle lady from New York. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No. No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 3787 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. I now call up H.R. 1204, the District of Columbia Chief Financial Officer Salary Home Rule Act. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1204 to amend the District of Columbia Home Rule Act to permit the District of Columbia to establish the rate of pay of the Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia.
Without objection, the bill is considered read, and upon amendment at any point, the chair recognizes herself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, copies of which have been distributed electronically to all members in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1204 offered by Ms. Maloney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the legislation, Mrs. Norton, for 5 minutes.
Again, I thank you, Chairwoman Maloney, for marking up this bill, which is critical to the financial operations of the District of Columbia. This bill would give the district the authority to increase the pay of its chief financial officer. At the outset, I want to emphasize that the CFO is paid with local, not federal funds. Under the D.C. Home Rule Act, D.C. may pay the CFO an amount equal to the pay of the Vice President of the United States, but the D.C. Council has no authority to increase the CFO's pay above that amount. This bill would allow D.C. to pay the greater of the Vice President's pay or a rate established in law by the district. The CFO was established by Congress in 1995. Congress vested the CFO with extraordinary powers and designed the CFO to be independent of the D.C. mayor and the council. The CFO may be removed only for cause by the mayor, subject to approval of 2/3 of the council, while D.C. should have the authority to govern itself without congressional interference, so long as the CFO exists and we don't have statehood. My bill would maintain the independence of the CFO by establishing a permanent floor on the CFO's pay and also by prohibiting the council from reducing the pay of the CFO during the CFO's term. The D.C. CFO is unique in the United States. D.C. cannot obligate or expend funds without CFO certification. Available funds exist. CFO manages a $17 billion budget that consists of state, county, and city functions, and the CFO has more than 1,700 employees. D.C. requested that I introduce this bill to enable it to pay the CFO an amount necessary to retain and recruit the best CFOs. D.C. is currently searching for a permanent CFO. Although the CFO is the most powerful non-elected official in the district, more than 20 D.C. employees make more than the CFO. D.C. must compete with both the private and public sectors for high-quality CFOs, and there are many public and private CFOs who make more than the DC CFO. Again, this bill is critical to the financial operations of the district, and I urge my colleagues to support it.
Bill's back. Who else seeks recognition? Mr. Comer is now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Chief Financial Officer, or CFO, plays an essential role in managing the District of Columbia's financial challenges and should be properly compensated for such efforts. The CFO is responsible for the district's financial operations, including more than 1,700 staff members and the district's multi-billion-dollar budget. This bill revises the rate of pay of the CFO of the District of Columbia to attract the best candidates to seek the position. If the district believes that it needs to adjust the rate of pay for this position in order to recruit a more qualified senior financial management official, then Congress should support these efforts. I believe compensation for local executives is a matter best handled at a local level, especially when we in Congress need the district to effectively manage its municipal affairs to support a vibrant and secure national capital city on behalf of the American people. So I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on this bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. The District of Columbia is a diverse and vibrant city of more than 700,000 Americans. The district's government fills the role of city, county, and state all in one. As a result, its finances are especially complex. The district's chief financial officer, or CFO, is independent of the mayor and the council, but may be removed by the mayor with a 2/3 vote of the council. Recently, the DC CFO left the position. Unfortunately, DC is unable to attract the best and most qualified candidates to fill the role due to its inability to properly pay the CFO. Current law prevents the council from increasing the CFO's pay to an appropriate level, which is capped at the same rate as the vice president's salary. CFOs of other major jurisdictions in this country make significantly more than that on a real basis. H.R. 1204 would lift the existing cap and instead create a salary floor for the CFO, allowing the CFO to retain its independence and increase the council's ability to attract the best candidates for the position. DC requires an expert CFO who can help it continue to thrive financially. And I would urge my colleagues to remember that the CFO's salary is paid completely with local funds raised from DC residents, so this costs the federal government absolutely nothing. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back the balance of my time. Who else seeks recognition? The question now occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentlewoman from New York. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 1204 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. I now call up H.R. 1224, the Merit Systems Protection Board Empowerment Act. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 1224 to reauthorize the authority of the Merit System Protections Board and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes herself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, copies of which have been distributed electronically to all members in advance. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1224, offered by Ms. Maloney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as base text for purposes of amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the legislation, Mr. Conley, for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairwoman, I thank you for bringing up H.R. 1224, the Merit System Protection Board Empowerment Act, to markup. The MSPB is an independent agency whose mission is to protect the merit system principles and promote an effective federal workforce free of prohibited personnel practices. It guards federal employees and veterans against job discrimination and wrongful termination, and defends federal employees who seek to blow the whistle against waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption in the federal government, a principle upheld on a bipartisan basis by this committee over many years. In the 116th Congress, I worked with former Chairman, our late good friend Elijah Cummings, to introduce legislation that would have temporarily extended the term of the last remaining board members in an attempt to avoid an entirely vacant board. The late Chairman and I also collaborated in legislation to empower the MSPB General Counsel to act on urgent cases of abuse against federal employees, the Interim Stay Authority to Protect Whistleblowers Act. Unfortunately, the board has now been entirely vacant for 2 years, lacking a quorum to conduct its adjudicatory responsibilities. Despite the lack of a quorum in the MSPB's leadership, the board continued other operations, including issuance of 5,473 decisions in FY 2020 by administrative judges. In addition, MSPB staff continue to prepare draft decisions that future board members could use upon their confirmation. But none of those draft decisions have the force of effect. While Congress must confirm expert leaders to the MSPB to conduct its critical mission, Congress must also take steps to ensure that the board is reauthorized and prepared to meet challenges it will face as it tackles the backlog of 3,000 prohibited personnel practice cases that only a board with a quorum can hear by law. H.R. 1224 would help the MSPB ramp up operations by reauthorizing the MSPB through 2026, which will enable it to provide protection for our federal employees for the next half-decade. The bill would also allow the board to conduct employee surveys to help ensure that agencies are following merit system principles for the competitive civil service and potentially identify where improvements might be necessary. Finally, the bill enables the board to collect information on applicants for federal employment when not prohibited by existing law and require successful completion of whistleblower training for MSPB members, administrative judges, and other applicable employees. The Occupational Safe and Health Administration has stated that anti-retaliation training, such as the whistleblower training we're codifying here, are one of the 5 key elements in creating an effective anti-retaliation program in any organization. One medical center in Seattle, for example, reduced its insurance liabilities by 74% by implementing a collection of whistleblower-friendly policies, including training staff to offer support and resources to fix issues brought forward by its own staff. This bill is endorsed by the National Federation of Federal Employees, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association, the Project on Government Oversight, the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, the Partnership for Public Service, Government Accountability Project, the National Whistleblower Center, and the National Taxpayers Union. While this bill does not solve the larger problem of confirming qualified leaders at the helm of the board, it does take steps to ensure that when President Biden's recent nominees to the board are confirmed, they can start at the sprint that will be needed to address the years-long backlog of adjudications. The bill also strengthens the federal posture of whistleblower protection through ensuring merit system principles and requiring training to help better engage whistleblowers. I want to thank the chairwoman again who co-sponsored this bill, as well as my other colleagues who are co-sponsors, and I urge adoption of the bill. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Who else seeks recognition? Mr. Heiss, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Merit Systems Protection Board forms a vital part of the merit-based civil service system. We all know that. The board, however, has been unauthorized since 2007. Although the funding has never lapsed, we still have some major issues. And this bill, H.R. 1224, does obviously provide needed reauthorization for the board. And in that sense, it's a legitimate part that needs to take place. I get that. But this bill also fails to place a limit on the authorization of funds. That's very concerning to me. This opens the door for excessive appropriations for the board under a Democratic-controlled Congress and administration. In addition, the board is in need of meaningful reforms, which this bill fails to include. I have introduced a bill, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, H.R. 1922, the Merit Systems Protection Board Reauthorization Act of 2021. And it does include both spending restraint and MSPB reforms that are desperately needed. Committee Democrats, however, have refused to consider this bill. And, look, my bill includes funding caps. I believe that's very important. Funding caps of approximately $47 million for each of the fiscal years between 22 and 2026. This includes most, and not all, but most of the funding that MSPB has sought for its current funding request. The lower funding levels in my bill is appropriate. We have to put an end to the sky is a limit type of spending that we are watching both from President Biden and his congressional allies that they've been pursuing. And that goes for big spending bills, whether we're talking President Biden's multi-trillion-dollar spending bills, but it also applies to smaller bills like this one. My bill has some very important substantive reforms for the board, things like the requirement of filing fees for most appeals to the board. That would discourage frivolous appeals. It also includes the institution of summary judgment appeals to the board. That would obviously streamline litigation before the board. It has limitations of the board's authority to mitigate adverse personnel actions taken by an agency unless the action is so disproportionate to the employee's conduct that would be without any real justification. Of course, that just gives disciplinary authority, which is desperately needed. My bill also gives a requirement that agency personnel actions be sustained by the board if they are supported by substantial evidence. Of course, that's a very important aspect that also deals with necessary disciplinary actions. My bill also provides the elimination of the ability of career senior executive service employees to appeal emergency furloughs to the board, which increases the agency's ability to respond to emergencies. And finally, my bill provides authorization for board members to be reappointed at the expiration of their initial terms. And, we don't need to go through this whole thing of being left without a quorum, as has been the case in recent years, as ranking member or as the chairman mentioned just a few moments ago. I think it's important that we have spending restraints and that we have substantive reform that my bill would include. Look, we've saw in 2017, the board received over 5,400 appeals in regional and field offices, and so many were frivolous. So many were frivolous that over 57% were dismissed without the board needing to look at the merits of the case whatsoever. My bill's filing fee requirement would help clear out the clutter so that those frivolous cases would not be nearly as prevalent. And it would allow the MSPB to focus on the cases that are actually needed to be heard. My bill's summary judgment reform will make those genuine cases get resolved faster. And, this bill, H.R. 1224, provides no limit to the bill's funding, inviting wasteful spending. It provides no reforms that strengthens the agency's ability to efficiently and effectively hold employees accountable for their poor performance. Instead, H.R. 1224 introduces even greater inefficiency into agency proceedings, requiring employees to receive hearings in addition to opportunities to litigate their cases on the basis of case briefs. Beyond that, H.R. 1224 only requires increased whistleblower law training for board adjudicators and increased assistance by OPM and other agencies as the board conducts surveys of federal employees or seeks information about applicants. Look, I know we've got to reauthorize, but we need reforms as well. I do not like this bill as it currently stands, and for that reason, in its current form, I would oppose it and encourage others to do the same. With that, Madam Chair, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize myself. The Merit Systems Protection Board Empowerment Act achieves a goal that many of us can agree on, reauthorizing the Merit System Protection Board, or MSPB, through 2026. MSPB is a three-member board that is responsible for adjudicating claims of prohibited personnel practices and ensuring that the merit system principles are upheld throughout the federal government. Its authorization expired in 2007, nearly 14 years ago. The fact that Congress has let this agency operate without an appropriate authorization for 14 years is unacceptable. What's worse, MSPB has not been able to function at all for the last 4 years because it hasn't had a quorum, and the board has been completely vacant for 2 years. This dysfunction has a real impact on federal workers. As of April 30th of this year, the MSPB had a backlog of 3,241 cases. That means 3,241 current and former employees are in limbo, waiting for decisions on allegations such as harassment or retaliation. A fully functioning MSPB is necessary to protect employees, including those who bravely come forward with allegations of waste, fraud, and abuse. President Biden has nominated 2 board members for Senate confirmation, which will be a great relief for the agency. But getting through the backlog will be a tremendous challenge, and it will require sufficient resources to process thousands of pending petitions. Reauthorizing the MSPB is an important first step toward making sure Congress appropriate funding. This bill would also allow the MSPB to survey current and prospective federal employees and incorporate the results into the agency's studies and guidance. This will empower the MSPB to monitor the way agencies apply merit system principles and proactively address any improper practices. The bill also provides for training for MSPB officials and administrative judges on interacting with whistleblowers. The reauthorization of the MSPB and the reforms of this legislation will strengthen the agency as it prepares to resume its work with a quorum. I am pleased to be a co-sponsor of H.R. 1224, and I thank my colleague, Congressman Conley, for his dedication to preserving the MSPB and its mission. I urge all members to support this legislation. Who else seeks recognition?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment that I'd like to offer and withdraw.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1224, offered by Mr. Heiss of Georgia.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with. The gentleman is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Look, I in my opening statements gave a good explanation of what my amendment would offer, and I believe it's necessary that we get to that point. I fully recognize that the National Taxpayer Union has supported H.R. 1224, but I also know that they have issued a letter urging my Democratic colleagues to work with me in instituting some of the reforms in my amendment. And I would ask unanimous consent that the letter from the National Taxpayer Union be included in the record, please, ma'am.
Without objection.
Thank you very much. But with that, I also am very much interested in the park police, and I've been working with Chairman Conley and his office in advancing that, and in good faith for us to work together in that in the future. I will at this point withdraw my amendment and look forward to working with Chairman Conley and others to not only include some of the reforms of my amendment here, but also in ensuring the park police are able to increase their pay and do the job that they are called upon to do. And with that, Madam Chair, I will withdraw this amendment and yield back.
The gentleman yields back and withdraws the amendment. Who else seeks Mr. Conley is now recognized. Chairman Conley.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I want to thank my friend from Georgia, Mr. Heiss. I know he wants to pursue some additional reforms, and I pledge to him, as chairman of the subcommittee, I will work with him to look at how we can legislatively improve the Merit System Protection Board. But I think there's a certain urgency right now, as you cited, Madam Chairwoman, in terms of the dysfunctionality of the board for the last 2 years plus, which means we've got a backlog that may take 2 or 3 years. I'm very pleased that the National Taxpayer Union has endorsed this bill, not because it's a big spending bill, but because they recognize the immediacy of the situation. And so we want to stay flexible. But I do pledge to work with my friend. There are some reforms he's discussed that intrigue me, such as the ability to reappoint board members. That could very well be a reform that all of us could agree on. I do want to remind everyone, our subcommittee had a hearings now several years ago on the Merit System Protection Board, and on a bipartisan basis, all of us were shocked at how the Merit System Protection Board has been allowed to just go fallow. And all of us agreed that part of the problem was, frankly, in the other body, the Senate, in its unwillingness to confirm individual board members. They wanted to do it en bloc, and because the administration had not gotten around to all 3 board members, that meant no board members. And I think all of us on a bipartisan basis really decried that. So I want to thank my friend from Georgia for his willingness to allow this process to go forward. I think the bill we've got is absolutely imperative to restore functionality and to protect the rights of our federal employees. But moving forward, I pledge we will look for every opportunity for how to advance additional reforms. And of course, I have already pledged to my friend that we will look at both the GAO report and a hearing on the issue of the park police compensation, and he and I will work to find common ground legislatively as well. With that, I yield back.
I thank
The gentleman yields back, and I applaud his efforts to work with the gentleman, and I also add my support to this effort as we work forward. The question is now occurs on the amendment in the nature of substitute offered by the gentlelady from New York. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 1224 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. I now call up H.R. 3599, the Federal Rotational Cyber Workforce Program Act. The clerk will report the bill, which was distributed in advance.
H.R. 3599 to establish a federal rotational cyber workforce program for the federal cyber workforce and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. The chair recognizes herself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute, copies of which have been distributed electronically to all members in advance. The clerks will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3599, offered by Ms. Maloney of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered read and will serve as a base text for purposes of amendment. I now recognize the sponsor of the legislation, Mr. Rotational, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your leadership in bringing up Bill 3599 for a markup and a vote. Thank you for your excellent substitute amendment. And I want to thank Representative Mace for making this truly a bipartisan effort. The issue is very simple. Our country is facing cyber attacks of all types. We have faced them with the SolarWinds attack at federal agencies. We have faced them with critical utilities and critical private infrastructure that are subject to ransom, that are subject to cybersecurity threats. And we have even faced them with our most sensitive defense security apparatus. It is critical that we have a cyber strategy in this country. This bill is one part of that strategy. It would create a rotational program among the federal agencies so that those trained in cybersecurity can rotate through the federal agencies and develop expertise. It would allow us also to draw from the private sector and have a better collaboration between the private sector and the federal government at the highest order so that we can protect our federal agencies, so we can protect our national security, and ultimately so we can assist in protecting private industry from the cyber attacks that they face. This is a 21st century national security issue, and I'm really proud of the bipartisan way that Representative Mace and I have been able to put this forward thanks to your leadership, Chairwoman Maloney. I'm also pleased that this has been bipartisan, past the Senate, and is going to be part of the Senate Competition Act. So I'm optimistic it should pass the Senate. Hopefully it passes the House, and this can be yet another example of this Congress working in a bipartisan way to address this country's critical issues. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. Who else seeks recognition? Mr. Comer is now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We all agree the federal government has major work to do on the cybersecurity front. The many challenges we face include adequately securing IT infrastructure from cyber intrusions, supply chain hacks, and ransomware. Part of this vexing puzzle is maintaining a prepared and capable federal cyber workforce to defend our nation's government from a relentless onslaught of cyber attacks. And there's been and continues to be efforts to improve our federal workforce's cyber capabilities. Toward that end, the idea behind H.R. 3599, Federal Rotational Cyber Workforce Act, is sound. The bill would promote cyber rotational details throughout federal agencies so that our valuable cyber experts continue to improve their knowledge and sharpen their skills. However, there's a glaring problem with this bill. Cyber rotations are already happening in the federal government. Multiple programs already exist to ensure federal employees with IT and cyber expertise have options to cross-pollinate and deepen their experience. In fact, today's bill mimics one of these programs, which President Trump implemented by executive action. Executive Order 13870, entitled America's Cybersecurity Workforce, encouraged federal employees to be detailed to other agencies through a cybersecurity rotational assignment program. Today's bill establishes another federal rotational cyber workforce program, duplicating existing rotations programs. In fact, the current administration recognized this in the technical assistance received by the committee because it commented that this bill would be duplicative. The administration's technical feedback also noted how agencies already hold the necessary statutory and regulatory authority to create and manage cyber rotational assignments throughout the federal government. Simply, this bill is duplicative and unnecessary. While I support the intent behind this bill, I will oppose it at this time, but I will not call for a recorded vote. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Who else seeks recognition? Ms. Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Mace, is now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm proud to support this legislation that would help progress and retain highly skilled cybersecurity professionals in the federal workforce. Agencies across the federal government face an increasing cyber terrorism threat, but we struggle to hire and retain qualified cybersecurity employees. That's not how our government was meant to be operated, and it's unsustainable and dangerous. Just in 2020, there was a major federal government data breach by a group backed by the Russian government. 11 federal agencies were affected. And if the federal government can't protect its own information and personnel, how can it serve the civilians and firms these agencies are tasked with aiding? And if I can't trust a company's reputation for securing my data, how would we choose? I would choose another company. However, American citizens don't have that luxury in this particular scenario. This is a critical step in the right direction to address this undeniable risk. The risk of cybersecurity threats is real, and it's here, and it's on our front doorstep, and we have to take an active and bipartisan approach on all of these measures. Recent breaches of our federal cyber infrastructure, which left vulnerable our nation's security, show that our government needs to be integrated, to have an integrated federal cyber workforce that has the knowledge and skills to counter ever more sophisticated threats. My colleagues and I, on both sides of the aisle, are committed to working to ensure our government agencies get the resources they need to hire and retain properly trained cybersecurity experts to keep our nation safe. Thank you. I yield back, Madam Chair.
The gentlelady yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. The bill before us is the product of bipartisan cooperation of our fellow committee members, Representative Rokana and Nancy Mace, along with the leadership of the distinguished chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, Mr. Peters, and Senator John Hoeven. The amendment in the nature of a substitute is identical to the Senate bill, which was recently included in the United States Innovation and Competition Act passed by the Senate on a bipartisan basis earlier this month. Earlier this year, our committee held a hearing on the Government Accountability Office's 2021 High Risk Report, which details the area of government operation at greatest risk of failing to meet the considerable challenges they face. Cybersecurity was near the top of the list. When we held that hearing, we were still trying to grasp the magnitude of the massive SolarWinds breach, which allowed Russian hackers to infiltrate the networks of 9 federal agencies and go undetected for months. Around the same time, cyber attacks linked the Chinese government and targeting Microsoft's enterprise email software again threatened the internal data of federal agencies. And Russian hackers successfully breached the servers of the U.S. State Department and stole thousands of emails. These are only a few of the reasons why cybersecurity was included on the list of high-risk areas of greatest need, along with cyber skills gap that persist across the federal workforce. These two risks are linked. As the GAO report described, federal agencies are struggling to ensure that staff have the skills they need to address the critical cybersecurity risks and challenges they face. The Federal Rotational Cyber Workforce Program Act seeks to address both threats by establishing a personnel rotation program for cybersecurity professionals at federal agencies, allowing the Office of Personnel Management to use best practices learned from more limited existing programs and amplify their impact. Under this bill, talented cybersecurity professionals defending the nation's networks would have professional development opportunities beyond their primary assignments, and federal agencies would benefit from greater cross-agency collaboration that helps to retain top talent and exchange expertise. The security of federal IT systems and data is essential to national security, to preserving public trust in government institutions, and to ensuring agencies are able to meet their missions in serving the American people. I am proud to support this important bipartisan bill, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Who else seeks recognition? The question now occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 3599 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. Now we have one final piece of business that I will dispense with very quickly. Pursuant to notice, I call up the following postal naming bills, which were distributed in advance: H.R. 735, 1298, 2324, 2472, and 2473. Without objection, the bills are considered read, and I request unanimous consent for their immediate consideration en bloc. Without objection, the bills are passed. With that, there is no further business of the committee, so I want to thank you all for your participation today. Staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the bill. The committee stands adjourned.